Welcome to the show. It is Sandy and Sean. I'm Sean Drotar, Sandy Clough on my right, Danny Bailey producing. Thanks for joining us after a long Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully everyone had a safe, happy, and healthy one, and you caught a whole bunch of sports. And if you didn't, by the way, we won't spend a lot of time on it, but if you didn't spend any time looking at the Indianapolis 500, which got delayed for hours and hours because of weather, just go check out the final 5 laps on YouTube, where Joseph Newgarden was so perfect and meticulous in the strategies in those final laps, and a pass right on that final turn to pass over Pato O'Ward, who's finished in the top 5 2 of the last 3 years. Newgarden first to win the Indianapolis 500 back-to-back in decades. And with as good a driving performance as I've seen, Sandy, I watched that last turn, watched Newgarden dip in and get around O'Ward to take that victory. And I'm not joking. I think my jaw was literally open just staring there watching the TV, to one of those things where you actually say, I couldn't believe what I saw.
Don't see many finishes like that at the Indy 500.
No. Really, really impressive stuff, even though there was a long delay in getting the race going. But it is the NBA basketball that we're going to start with now, because the Celtics have already swept the Pacers in what has to be the easiest Eastern Conference championship they have ever had, or maybe any team in the Eastern Conference ever had. Only 2 real competitors this whole season, and both of them, the Sixers and the Bucks, had major injury problems throughout the season. The Celtics were able to just glide to the championship. But over in the West, the Mavericks have done maybe what a lot of people didn't expect. I didn't expect. I thought that the winner of the Nuggets-Timberwolves series would probably win the NBA Finals, because I loved the defense of Minnesota. I think they have the ability to score, but they haven't looked like it. The Mavs have been mopping the floor with them, now up 3-0, an opportunity to close the Timberwolves out tonight. A little surprised with the way this has gone, but we talked about this prior to the entire playoffs, that with the backcourt of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, 2 explosive guys who can go for more than 40 points in any given game, it presents a series of problems for the Timberwolves that the Nuggets, without a second top-tier scorer, could not present.
I don't buy the idea that the Nuggets would have done measurably better than the Timberwolves have done against Dallas. Let's remind ourselves of 2 things. With 4 minutes and 40 seconds left in games 1, 2, and 3, the leader has been Minnesota, not Dallas. Minnesota led by 102-98 with 3:15 left in game 1. Were outscored 10-3 in the last 3 minutes, 14 seconds. With 1 minute, 6 seconds left in game 2, it was even a bigger lead at 108-103 for the Timberwolves playing at home. They were outscored 6-0 in the last minute and 5. Game 3, it was 104-102 Minnesota with 4:36 left. They were outscored 14-3 in the final 4:35 of the game. Clutch points scored in all these games that have been 5 points or less at various stages in the final 5 minutes. And the 3 finals have been Dallas by 3, Dallas by 1, and Dallas by 9. Clutch points. The Dallas Mavericks in 3 games from Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic alone, 21. The Minnesota Timberwolves, 20.
Wow. I mean, that's just from the top 2 guys. I mean, it's really been remarkable.
I mean, I don't normally ascribe superiority to a team that, with just its 2 guards, is winning this series. And obviously there are other elements. Let's remember the young centers.
Right, Daniel Gafford, who you and I talked about.
Remember the trade acquisitions.
Right. Yeah. Gafford, early in the year, when the Nuggets played the Wizards, Gafford got smoked by Nikola Jokic. A lot of people get smoked by Nikola Jokic. But the comments after the game were what were fascinating. A guy that
for a young player
to
be wise beyond his years.
I expected I'm going to have a tough time. I tried to do what I could do and limit what he could do.
He actually had a pretty good game.
He
himself.
did, and we knew that the head on his shoulders was really good. Now you see him play against Rudy Gobert. You see him play against Karl Anthony Towns. He is more than holding his own. He is actually causing them major problems. And I think, again, one of the challenges for the Nuggets in this series against the Timberwolves, in which they lost in 7 games, is that Nikola Jokic, as usual, hit the nail on the head. The Timberwolves were built to beat the Denver Nuggets. They did that. But they aren't particularly well structured to beat a team like this that can keep coming at you in waves from the backcourt, score the kind of points that those guys can score, and then get opportunistic scoring from the rest of the roster. Maxi Kleber, by the way, with the shoulder injury, missed some time, has missed he should expected to even be back tonight, making things even more difficult for the Timberwolves. This is a really impressive run by a really explosive duo. The question is, historically, are two great players enough to win you a title? And oftentimes the answer is no. But then again, last year, the Nuggets won. They have won. They've never even had another all-star around Nikola Jokic.
Well,
so maybe things have changed.
It is surprising, I think, to most of us, that the experiment that last year seemed to be a dismal failure. Remember, Dallas tanked so that it wouldn't have to give up its protected pick.
Right.
In the first round, they tanked down the stretch, didn't even qualify for the play-in tournament.
And you're right, they did.
And those two guys were together, and they didn't seem to be a great fit. Neither one of them had a reputation for playing much, if any, defense. And yet this year, now that they've spent 13, 14 months together, once the playoffs started, and frankly, after the trade deadline, they were as good as any team in the league. And they beat the Nuggets out of a ball game down in Dallas that the Nuggets really wanted to win and were playing very well during that period when they went into Dallas, and a miracle shot by Kyrie beat them at the end. Kyrie and Doncic have both played better defense. They have both learned from the great assist man, Jason Kidd, who happens to be the right coach at the right time, although I don't know that Jason Kidd would be a great coach in many other situations. For this team, he's a calming influence. Irving, at least on the court, seems to be a different guy, devoid of distractions and other elements that might have interfered with his game in the past. There's never been any question about his talent.
No.
And Doncic has really calmed down. Yes, there's the occasional outburst, but the combination of Irving and Coach Kidd has kept Doncic a lot calmer and steadier in these playoffs. Yes, he's had some games that weren't great, but they are dominating this series because they're killing Minnesota in the last 5 minutes of every game. They're the fresher team. Their guards are better. Anthony Edwards said in what apparently amounts to trash talk to some people, I'm sorry, I don't get it. Before the series began, he said, I got Kyrie. Now, if that's trash talk, I trash talk you every day because I say I got you, Sean, before every program.
Right.
I don't consider that trash talk. However, I don't know that Anthony Edwards has proven capable of guarding either Doncic or Irving. And the guy who's done the best job on Doncic? Anderson.
Yeah.
Anderson has. Anderson has. Never plays. But
you got to be longer.
And often plays.
The way around it.
Often plays when Doncic isn't even on the floor. But when he's defended Doncic, he's done a much better job than any other defender, including Jaden McDaniels, who is one of the best defending wings in the NBA. I'm just thoroughly impressed with Dallas. I didn't see them as this kind of team. And I do think that they can compete with Boston. If Indiana could play Boston pretty close for at least 3 out of the 4 games, I think that Dallas can do it. And Dallas might even win a couple of games and maybe push Boston. Boston has not been pushed yet.
No.
Dallas has been pushed at various times. I think, what's the record now? 0-155 for teams that are down 0-3. It was 154, went to 155 when Boston swept Indiana. Great. So that's what Minnesota's up against. I think the interesting thing now is if Dallas wins tonight, both Dallas and Boston are going to be off for a long time because the finals aren't going to start later this week. Finals aren't going to start in May.
Right. Yeah. The
They're
finals start when they're
for
scheduled.
June.
Right.
They're
just the way
scheduled
it is.
in June, and they will start in June, regardless of the outcome of the game tonight. I think one of the advantages, even if they lose tonight, but they still have a lot of time off, let's say they win the next one back in Minnesota, or even win the sixth game at home. The advantage would be that Lively would probably be able to come back. Now, I don't know if he's going to play tonight or not. He wasn't concussed the other day, but he did sprain his neck, and that sounds like an injury that could keep him out for a while.
You might
but
not
getting
want to play
him back would be a big deal because actually he plays more than Gafford plays at this point. Though he comes off the bench, he plays more than Gafford plays when both are healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really close. They're both averaging 21 minutes
He's
a game.
more of a shot
series,
blocker than Gafford, although Gafford can block shots. It's as good a 1-2 center punch, and it's kind of a counter to the Nuggets' apparent belief, and it isn't just the coach, I would say, who believes this. It's Tim Connolly and Calvin Booth who believe it too, apparently, that a backup center, especially one who can block shots, is a luxury that you can't always afford.
No.
And Dallas is giving lie to that philosophy.
Every team that's left is. Minnesota is. We know they have shot blockers. Yeah, you have Rudy Gobert, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year.
And you have other shot blockers.
Right. In Boston, they added a guy in Porzingis in part to block shots, averaging more than 1.5 per game.
And they have the best shot blocking guard in the sport in Derek White.
Right. In pound for pound. Yes. Derek White averaging 1.2 in the playoffs as well. And the idea that you don't get blocks there, you have Miles Turner with the Pacers, they're eliminated, but 1.5 there as well. And they don't particularly have a backup. The 3 teams that are left have shot blockers. And they have depth at shot blocking. And the Denver Nuggets don't. And this is something that I think has been a concern for a while. It's been a concern for me. We'll find out what they do if the Nuggets might change their mind. But look, trends happen in every sport, and they happen in the NBA as well. But it's worth noting that the team that eliminated the Nuggets can block shots. The team that's about to eliminate, the team that eliminated the Nuggets can block shots. The team that's won the East can block shots. The team that doesn't block shots, at least from the center position, is the Denver Nuggets. Jokic gets the occasional just because of his size, and Aaron Gordon can do it here and there. But shot blocking is not part of the Nuggets game. And maybe
shot
it needs
blocking
to be.
And three-point shooting, not really a big part of what the Nuggets do. They're last in three-point attempts, and they're at or near the bottom in shot blocking.
Yeah, well, the Mavericks, as we know, shoot threes. The Celtics shoot threes. What the Nuggets may be missing is something that catches up as the league gets cyclical, that the Nuggets win. Teams look at other ways to win. You try to money ball it a little bit. The Nuggets now have to adjust, and they have to do it with not a lot of money. And when I say not a lot, I mean they're in the second apron already, and they have to wait and see what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope chooses to do with his player contract. He can choose to decline it and become a free agent, and that's what the Nuggets, quite frankly, expect to happen, although they hope it doesn't. We will talk a little bit about the Colorado Rockies, who, again, not good, but playing quite a bit better.
Playing well. They're not a good team, but they're playing well. Like one.
Now, I am not a good golfer, nor do I play well, but people who are better, or even if you're not, you have a nice option for them.
Well, absolutely. It's time to get out and play. If you didn't during the Memorial Day weekend.
Did. I was terrible 101.
You can this week. And you do it by going to the city of Denver with a perfect golf pass that they have been offering for weeks now. Doesn't matter whether you're just getting started or you're someone who's played for decades. May not be any good, but you played for a long time. You've got some options. The practice and play pass is for those new to the game to practice what they have learned and transition it onto the golf course. The Learn and Play Pass 1.0 is geared toward adult beginners, people who have never held a club, or players looking to advance their game. Or if you've been playing for a while, try the Learn and Play Pass 2.0, which is designed to be flexible for intermediate players looking to improve and fine-tune their game. And of course, you always looking to have some fun. The Friends and Family Pass lets you play mini golf or hit the driving range. You can bring up to 3 guests with you every time. 8 unique courses and opportunities for all skill levels. Denver Golf is perfect for anyone. Learn more about everything Denver Golf has to offer by visiting cityofdenvergolf.com. Come home to play. Denver Golf is your neighborhood course.
That's what I should have done. I should have played mini golf. I don't think you can get to triple digits in mini golf. I would have been better at that. Maybe options galore for you at Denver Golf. I'm not great at golf, but what I am pretty good at is eating, especially barbecue, whether that's before or after a round or over these long weekends. And if you didn't get a chance to try our friends at Rolling Smoke on the Memorial Day weekend, well, you still have your chances. They're not going anywhere. They're growing by leaps and bounds. With warmer weather here, time to get outside and have fun with your family and friends. And sure, you want to entertain everyone at the house, but sometimes you need a break from the kitchen, and that's when you need Rolling Smoke. Whether there's a half dozen folks, just the family, or maybe you're going to entertain 50 or more, bring the whole family reunion. You can pick up the best barbecue in town from one of Rolling Smoke's 4 locations. They're in Aurora, inside the Stanley Marketplace. That's the original. In Golden, inside the Golden Mill, at the corner of Dry Creek and University at Centennial. That's the closest one to us right here at Mile High Sports. And the newest location, open on 38th Avenue in Wheat Ridge. And if you're headed to the show in Red Rocks, a bunch of those, now maybe that afternoon rain coming around, you're thinking of going up and seeing something, well, maybe you're craving a little barbecue. Well, you can find them there too. So give them a try while you're up at Red Rocks. You cannot go wrong. It's Rolling Smoke Barbecue. Find them online and order there as well at rollingsmokebbq.com. Sandy, the Rockies took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies, breaking their streak of series of which they had. We talked about it before the Phillies came in. When Grover Cleveland was the president, the Rockies take 2 of 3.
1892, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Rockies take 2 of 3 from the Phillies, and then they go ahead and start this series with Cleveland, and then they win that first one. These were 2 first-place teams coming in at the time. Philly was won 9 out of the last 10.
The team in baseball, and
right.
the team with the best record in Philadelphia coming in, and I believe still looking quickly at the standings here, Philly is still have the best record in baseball.
Yeah.
Even after losing 2 out of 3 to the Rockies. I did go out to the old ball yard on Friday night, and I thought it was minus Bryce Harper.
You didn't get to see a lot of Harper. Yeah, got ejected in the first set.
But I thought it was as well played an all-around game on both sides. Very few walks, no errors by either team. The game went 11 innings, so even the Rockies got good relief pitching on Friday night. Not so good Saturday, or they might have swept the Phillies. But they got timely hitting, including a 2-out home run in the bottom of the 9th that tied the game 2-2. And it was the kind of game that you could have watched at Dodger Stadium and said, that's a well-played game in a great pitcher's park. The Coors Field offensive benefits did not particularly materialize. And yes, not facing Harper more than the one time helped, but all the other Philadelphia bashers were rendered impotent on Friday night. And I've been to a fair share of Rockies games down through the years. I don't know that I've seen any Rockies game in more than 30 years that was all around a better baseball game than that was. It went along. If the game had ended as they entered the 9th inning at the 2-hour mark, if the game had ended after 9 innings, instead of going extra innings, the game would have lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Wow.
That's the kind of baseball game I grew up watching.
Ezekiel Tovar,
in the era of pitching.
Yeah. Tovar, their shortstop, 4 hits, including the game-winning single in the
he was incredible.
11th.
And he's
really
a terrific young player.
Yeah, coming along nicely. Unfortunately, one of the Rockies' other young, interesting players, Jordan Beck, ends up breaking his hand, trying to make a sliding catch on Saturday. He will have surgery tomorrow, by the way, be out 4 to 6 weeks, been placed on the injured list. So bad luck for Beck and for the Rockies, who very much want to see what their young player can do. But when you do look at the way you brought up the bullpen on Saturday, they walk into the 9th inning with a 4-2 lead, and the bullpen coughs up 6 in the 9th. You lose that game. Obviously, that's disappointing. But they come back again on Sunday, and we talked about it before. Ranger Suarez, who had not lost all season long. We're getting to more Memorial Day weekend. Had not lost 9-0. The Rockies had them their first win. Ryan McMahon with the big bat in that one as well. And then yesterday, Charlie Blackmon, 3 for 4, 4 RBIs from the leadoff position, by the way, and a highlight reel catch that led off most of the Sports Center and baseball highlights.
It was one of the best defensive plays.
Still getting it done. So for the Rockies, interesting interesting series for them, an interesting way that they're playing. Cal Quantrill, who pitched again, who has been the Rockies' best starter, by the way, along with Austin Gomber. Gomber, by the way, pushed back, not put on the injured list, but pushed back for a couple days after a little bit of soreness, so something worth monitoring. But Cal Quantrill, who's been the Rockies' best pitcher, said this weekend, quote, "We can play good baseball if we play baseball the right way." Sandy, I thought of you the second that I heard that from Quantrill, because you have talked in the early parts of the season about the way the Rockies, under Bud Black, who's generally been very sharp about fundamentals, had kind of let this team kind of slide, it seemed, especially in April, and do a lot of really sloppy stuff. They led the league in errors for a while, a lot of really careless decisions, even to a point where he put in Kyle Freeland to pinch run and almost got him injured, or did get him injured, but it wasn't serious.
He was injured, but it was a pitching-related injury, but it was still silly. After he had sustained that injury, actually, to have him out there as a pinch runner where he could have been
maybe even more seriously hurt. But Bud Black, that was your main complaint. Has that gotten better? Has that been Black, or is it just some professionalism on the part of the players?
I think it's a little bit of both. And I will give Bud Black credit for remaining calm. We've seen
it seemed almost too calm at times,
temper tantrums through the years. I have rarely seen that work out for clubs. Now, guys don't have to get along. They can even get into fights in the locker room, clubhouse. But you can't have a manager lose emotional control over 162 games. He's allowed maybe an outburst or two, but screaming at reporters and throwing stuff around in the dugout, even in press conferences after games, that generally doesn't work very well. I think his work with the pitching staff, and he's a former pitcher. I think with respect to the starting pitchers, it's been excellent. They had some newbies because they made some changes after the disaster in Oakland. They had some newbies out there pitching in relief in back of Block, who was terrific on Friday night.
Which is funny. We talked about him the year before.
Gave him some length. Actually, the irony was, he got into that fight with Harper last year. He struck him out the first inning. Now, strike two was not really strike two. It's just well framed by Diaz. And strike three was a bad pitch that Harper swung at, because strike two, which was a ball, had been called a strike.
You're frustrated.
And then in frustration, he dropped his bat. He threw his helmet, said a few words to the home plate umpire, and was summarily tossed from the game. But I liked some of the guys I saw in relief on Friday night, and Philadelphia is a dangerous team, even without Harper
the best record
in the
baseball
lineup. And their pitching is very good. I thought Block was better than his counterpart Friday night, and I thought the Rockies bullpen was better. After all, the bullpen didn't give up anything on Friday night, and the Philly bullpen basically blew a 2-0 lead.
I shortchanged Charlie Blackmon, by the way. He's not 36, he's 37, and he'll be 38 on Saturday coming up this week. And so seeing him...
And he did not play on Friday.
Right.
He did not play on Friday, but obviously...
And then Beck broke his hand on Saturday.
So he got back into the
line. At least for Beck's case, small consolation. But if you're going to break your hand trying to make a catch, at least make the catch, which he did. Diving liner on Nick Castellanos, so good play by him. Unfortunate break for the rookie. But Blackmon then comes in because Sean Bouchard called up to replace Beck. Blackmon goes ahead and plays in right field and plays it outstanding.
He talked who else didn't play Friday, although he did come in late as a defensive replacement. Ryan McMahon didn't play. He had a back issue that kept him out of the lineup, but he did come in later on in the ball game, and of course they won it on the Tovar hit in extra innings. But I was just very impressed with their poise, and you win 3 out of 4. We were forecasting that this would be a terrible stretch.
They might lose them all.
You got Philadelphia, you got Cleveland, and then you go play the Dodgers out in Los Angeles. Now, much of these fears have yet to be realized or disproven entirely, but starting 3-1 over this stretch of 9 games, I think it is, not bad. I mean, going 3-6, we would have thought that was overly optimistic. Even if they lose 2 more to Cleveland and get swept by the Dodgers, they'll still have done reasonably well. And the record now up to 19-34. Yes, they're still 13 games out of first and 6 games out of fourth in the division. They're not going anywhere, but they are showing that they are capable of playing good baseball. And in the month of May, they're 12-12.
How about that? Charlie Blackmon did talk about it after the game yesterday. He said the assignment has changed a little bit, I guess you could say. That doesn't mean it's any less important. It just means I need to not be surprised in certain situations and be ready to go when it's my turn to play. I also need to try to be a little more consistent when I do get out there. And I think that the example that he's given, Blackmon is like unlikely at this stage to play significantly if he plays for any other franchise in his career, he won't be playing a big role. And I think Blackmon, when he talks about the assignment has changed, I think he understands that this is just the way it's going to go for him. He's not going to be a guy that wins a World Series. He's not going to be a guy that maybe appears in the playoffs again. And that's unfortunate. Every player wants that. But what Blackmon has done is remained professional. He's remained a leader, and he's not really the rah-rah type. He's the leader that handles it the way he just described it, much like Todd Helton was as well. He goes out every single day, and he does his job. He's ready to play. He's ready when he's called on. If he needs to play any of the outfield positions, he's ready. If he needs to DH that day, although it's not his favorite, he's ready. And that kind of professionalism, when you turn 38, especially when you're talking about youngsters like Tovar and to an extent Brendan Rodgers and Jordan Beck, Nolan Jones, who's hurt, that rubs off on people, much like Helton rubbed off on Blackmon.
I just wish, and I'm not trying to be cruel here and kick somebody when they're down, and actually he did have a couple of hits in the game I saw Friday night. Why can't Chris Bryant be the right-handed hitting version of Charlie Blackmon? Why not?
And that's really the question, right? I mean,
I don't understand that one. And I'm not saying if he were, it would make him worth $182 million.
But that's a sunk cost. That's gone.
But it would make him a player of some value if he just hit around 230, 240 with occasional power and showed the kind of leadership that he has in past stops, including the most recent one he made before arriving in Denver, and that was with the San Francisco Giants.
Right. Who liked him quite a bit, but they just weren't going to pay that kind of money. Right. But they liked the energy he brought to the team. Who knows? It's a long summer. There's still an opportunity there. Even the Rockies aren't going anywhere. The question is, you're paid a lot of money. You're going to go do the best at your job, or are you going to mail it in? And that's the question that Chris Bryant will have to ask himself over the course of the season, injuries notwithstanding. We'll have an opportunity to talk about the Colorado Buffaloes in just a moment with our friend Sean Keeler of the Denver Post. But I do want to remind you that if you're trying to sell your home in Colorado, well, okay, you can do that because people are still looking to move here, but you want to make sure you get the best possible outcome out of that, because this is probably the most valuable property you've ever owned. And the Colorado home market's been crazy for years, but I can tell you how to navigate it. You call our friends Dave and Mark at Key Real Estate Group's Colorado Luxury Home Team. And when I say the Luxury Home Team, I'm referring to that high-end luxury service you get. Condos to castles, they'll treat you the exact same way. That's what Dave and Mark do. They've been in the same offices for 25 years. They're privately owned. You're not dealing with the big people. You're not dealing with places that go all over the town and pick out new spots. They've been there, they've done that, and they keep their position. And that's why you want to work with Dave and Mark directly. They know how to ride the highs and lows, stable and experienced. That's everything you'll get at Key Real Estate Group's Colorado's Luxury Home Team. Inventory still low around the Denver metro area. So when you're looking to price your home correctly, it's going to sell, and it's going to sell quickly, but you want to make sure it gets the most for you. So let Dave and Mark give you a free valuation. Spring is already here. Summer feels like it's right around the corner, and there are people looking day and night now for new homes. So there's no reason for you to wait. Let Dave and Mark represent you to make sure you're getting everything you deserve. They're easy to get a hold of. Call Dave and Mark at the Key Real Estate Group at 720-900-LIST. That's 720-900-LIST, or visit them online today at keyrealestategroup.com.
We know some of you are subscribed to the Sandy and Sean podcast, and we thank you for that and for listening to our show on demand whenever it is convenient. It's your schedule. But we have plenty of other podcasts you can listen to, and I hope to familiarize you with some of those podcasts. Ryan Blackburn weekly guest with us here. That keeps you up to date on what's happening with the Nuggets with the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. The hockey, as far as the Avalanche are concerned, covered by R.F. Dean. Check out his podcast, Hockey Mountain High. Mile High baseball fans actually have something to cheer about in recent days, and they get the latest on the Rockies with Drew Kreisman and the 20th and Blake podcast. And questions on Bo Nix, the Bronco quarterbacking situation, the prospects for 2024 are addressed with the Broncos podcast. Troy Renk, our friend from the Denver Post, hosting that one. He's featured on the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. So all that and a lot more, just search Mile High Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
The Denver Post, as you mentioned, of course, a hotbed of outstanding writers, and one of the very, very best. Delighted to have him on the program again, the opportunity to talk to Sean Keeler. You can follow Sean on social media at Sean Keeler, SEAN, the normal way to spell it, not the way I do it. Keeler, Keeler. Sean, thank you so much.
He still laughs at that.
Yeah, well,
we've had him on several times, and he still,
it is.
Still
every
chuckles.
single time someone asks me how to spell my name, they assume SEAN. That
you
must
use
be the
that
right
same
way.
line every time, and you still get
I had boyhood of harassment for not having enough consonants in my name, so being able to laugh about it in my 50s is a good thing.
Maybe there's just no right way to
That's
spell
true.
it, I guess. Maybe we're just stuck no matter what, just the way it goes. But Sean, thanks so much for joining us.
So,
The idea, you wrote a story that I think is really fascinating, and I do want to touch on it because I know that Sandy has thoughts as well. Up in Boulder, the idea that the Buffaloes are trying to sort of microwave an offensive line, expected to have 5 new starters, including, worth noting, about Deion Sanders recruiting Jordan Seaton, the top tackle in his class out of the IMG Academy in Florida. Seaton expected to start at left tackle, as you pointed out. That's not impossible. Georgia did that with a freshman as well. But all 5 guys potentially being new. And there's no argument that the offensive line last year wasn't very good, 56 sacks on Shadur Sanders, not all of them attributable to the line. But the line had to get better. On one hand, I feel like Sanders is sort of stuck because you have to get the line better. And they probably could get 5 better starters. They can be more talented at every position. But offensive line takes a while, of course, to get everybody on the same page. But if you're Sanders, what do? You've got to start with the talent and try to get it better before you worry about having to spend more time for these guys to get used to each other, right?
Yeah, that's the thing about, and Sean and Sandy, thank you for having me. Belated happy Memorial Day to you guys. It's not a plug and play position. It's a unit. And because you've got a program and a coach who kind of sees things from the NFL down and how they could apply, he just says, well, how is this any different from signing 6 free agents or 7 free agents and saying, you got to learn this in 5 months, 3 months, go? Well, one, no NFL team signs 6 new linemen in off-season 1. The cap won't let you, right? You might draft some. You might have 6 new ones, but that's also on the high side. 2, nobody is bringing 10, 11 of them. Sorry, we did a count. 11 guys are in that offensive line room that weren't there last year. And I think only 2, I think it's Tyler Brown and our guy from Cherry Creek, Hank Zelinskas, I think are the only carryover from that room. I can't think. I've covered college football longer than I care to admit, but we're going on 3 decades, right? I can't think of an offensive line room that changed 92% in one summer and then said, go, we're going to make this work. I mean, that's just the one position, maybe D-line too, the interior D-line, where you just don't do that free agency style, or rather, historically, you haven't done that. And a lot of experts are very dubious of all the dubious, and there are many levels of dubious with CU and Deion Sanders. That's the one, just from a football standpoint, where most people who are experts and who in the column you're referring to today are like, whoa. It's not the same game, one. It's not the NFL. And nobody changes 90% of their room in a season and expects they're going to get guaranteed better results, even if your results were terrible. It's a developmental position at a program with a coach who doesn't care about development. And that's going to be a very fascinating follow among many of the fascinating follows with Deion in year 2.
Among the many good points he made, and you're the best at at doing this. You often go outside and find an expert such as Jeff Schwartz, who is an analyst for Fox Sports now, and he helps you with your argument. And in this case, the most impressive point I thought, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is the fact, and you pointed this out, but I'm sure he referenced it, that last year Georgia, LSU, Oregon, and Washington were among the leaders in the award sweepstakes, the Joe Moore Award for 2023, presented to the best offensive line unit in the country. And those four had obviously 20 offensive linemen. How many came out of the portal? 2? Am I right about that?
2 portal guys out of 20 starters. I mean, it's back to the math again. You have this. I love many things, and everyone's, oh, Keeler hates Dion. No, I love Dion because I love anything that's entertaining. We talked about this on the show. Guys who try to make the impossible. I love a magic show. I love trying to make the illusion something reality. How do you make this work? You have a position where the 4 best offensive lines last year, who are the finalists for the Joe Moore Award, Sandy, as you point out, were 90% continuity guys who had been there 2 or more years. And that's your bar, right? Like, this is where we want to go. We want a top 10 offensive line. Okay, here's what a top 10 offensive line looks like. 1. Now, instead, we're going to get a 90% all new guys. And we're going to try to build something that's equivalent or pretty close because we think we can be a playoff team, although I've noticed Dion has backpedaled off that very significantly.
Now it's bowl team.
In the last few months. Now it's a bowl team. Notice in January, I'm not going to say it's because the fat guy in the Post called him out on the baloney or whatever word you want to use of presuming it to be a playoff team in the winter. And that was kind of the point of that January hit piece, it was called. I never said they weren't going to be a bowl team. I said that you're crazy if you think they're going to win 11, 12 games. And that suddenly, now it's like, we want to get Miss Peggy back to a bowl, which I think is reasonable and probably should have been the bar all along. So you're not going to get to a playoff level offensive line with that much turnover. Historically, it just hasn't happened, let alone with a true freshman left tackle. Because, yes, Georgia's tackle was a freshman last year. He was also a redshirt. So he got hurt last year and spent the year. What do you do traditionally when you're a lineman, a true freshman, even as good as you are, and you get hurt in that first season? You spend a year lifting weights. You spend a year getting stronger. You spend a year bulking up. So he was really ready to hit the ground running in a way that I'm not positive even Jordan Seaton, as talented as he is and as advanced as he is for his age, he's still going to be a 19-year-old lineman playing against grown-ups. We've still got, help me guys with the math on this, we've still got 24-year-olds, right? We've still got the last years of COVID guys. So you've still got a pretty wide range of ages. I think we're phasing that out next year, some of guys who won't have that COVID year, who'll be 5 years removed. So then they wouldn't have that year. Again, it's a lot of flaming torches in the air to try to juggle in one place. And I'll be fascinated to see what that looks like. And especially with the offensive line, because again, nobody's ever done it. And let me give credit where it's due. If they're 3-0 and they're ranked, and if they're 3-0, again, they will be, and they're looking great, and everything's on the table for those first 3 weeks. Because I know you guys have looked at that schedule and you've talked about it. Like literally anything's possible. I mean, hats off to them, because they will have rewritten the rule book again, in a rule book that's already being rewritten by the day as the NCAA takes legal loss after legal loss and looks to get out of that. I'll tip my cap to them if they're as good as they say they can be right out of the chute up front, because nobody's ever done it.
We're talking with Sean Keeler, a writer for the Denver Post. Sean, I guess this would be what I'd ask. If you were Deion Sanders, and I agree with your point that it's NFL down, the idea of development is not a priority. It's really almost treated as if it were pros, because let's face it, now college football to a certain extent really is that way. But at the same time, I guess I do look at it. I want to go back to my original premise here. If you're Deion Sanders, if you were running it, what would you do? Would you have kept as many of the players as you could on a subpar offensive line because you can develop them together? Or would you be better off bringing in more talent and hoping that they continue to gel? Because I think when we look at those great programs, yes, they recruit and they bring them in, but they have time because they get redshirted or because they don't have to step in because the offensive lines are better. So I get when you're a top 25 program regularly, you can keep recruiting offensive line and you can roll them. So when the seniors leave, the next guys are ready to go. But you have to start somewhere, right? I mean, what else should Deion Sanders have done except try to drastically improve the talent as quickly as possible?
No, he didn't necessarily have to do it as quickly as possible. That timetable is his because A, he's not patient, and B, all these kids are going to be done playing after this year, and so everything has been pointed towards the fall of 2024 anyway, including whether or not he stays past that. It's all about this season. Everything was piled into that one. Two, I think to answer your question specifically, you've got 8 or 9 not great offensive linemen. What do you do? And you want to be better right away. I think there's probably a happy medium, Sean, that there's 5 in, 5 out, 6 in, 6 out, somewhere in there, and not 10 out, 11 in. I mean, we're literally talking an entire 2 deep.
Yeah.
We talk about math. It's 10 guys. I mean, literally, you're doing that whole thing over again. I think there is a happy medium there again, where I see your point and I understand the urgency. And certainly there is some when also I think Travis Hunter's your best player, but your best pure offensive player is also your son. And he is also an NFL quarterback. And he is also legitimately an excellent college quarterback, that it does behoove you to speed up the investment as quickly as you can to maximize that final year you have of him going into this schedule and with this roster. I'm with you there. I do think there's a slightly slower gear of which you can do that and make it work maybe, but we're going to find out because 11 new guys, again, we love staring at history and we're going to see it. We'll find out.
And I guess that's your point is, what if it actually works, right? I mean, what if it works? Then maybe we are seeing the reinvention on the fly.
It might. I'm always willing. Here's the thing that's great. We've talked about this too. With everything with Deion Sanders, one of the great things and things I love about him too, they're saying it on the record. I love Deion. One of the things I love about Deion is anything is possible. 0-3 is possible. Aliens landing is possible. Donald Trump showing up to a game on the sidelines, possible. Everything is possible. And when that's the case, Deion retiring after 4 games, possible. You have to just kind of, I guess, be ready to zig and zag in any direction and just prepare yourself for the impossible, because we've kind of already seen it.
His premise seems to be, with regard to the offensive line, his premise seems to be that it's worked in the NFL with free agents joining teams, and it can work with us because we have a lot of coaches with NFL experience. And I assume he believes his coaching staff is much stronger this year than it was a year ago. But at least here locally, I don't know that it worked that great. The 2 expensive free agents that they signed on the offensive line were Powers and McGlinchey, and they weren't very good.
They weren't, and that's been pointed out to Prime, and then he reminds us that Sean Payton is the second smartest football person in this town after him.
Hey, but that's not an answer. Yeah. That's not a response. Is he saying Powers and McGlinchey were good and we just didn't see it? They weren't good.
He often says we're talking about because we're not at practice, which, by the way, he has closed. So there's a reason we're not at practice. But no, there are degrees to your point, and it is not an absolute. It's very much a shades of gray debate. Yeah, wins and losses are black and white, but getting you there's a lot of lanes in the middle to kind of get you to that point. So I think it's very easy for him to say, we're either all in or we're all out with this. And again, credit to him. He's never wavered from what his intentions are, even if the results are all over the place. But I'm going to backtrack to something you mentioned right there at the start of your statement. And that is, he's also acting under the presumption that his coaching staff is better. I don't think it is. And I want to see that on the field before I believe that. What he does is he has it as a group, it's more loyal, it's more attuned to him, it's more attuned to the needs of his sons, it's more attuned to the needs of his chosen ones in that locker room, that the 10 to 12 guys that he can name that he doesn't know. But is Pat Shurmur a better college offensive play caller than Sean Lewis? No, you will not convince me of that. And they're going to have to be a playoff team to convince me of that. And some of that is of the respect I have for Sean Lewis and what he did prior to coming to CU, which felt like a step down for him, which is why it felt like such a good hire. Again, we're conflating things here. We revised the history based on, Prime World, Prime's view of this. Well, this guy was anybody you leave. That's the other thing with Prime's view of the world. If you leave or you cross him or you step in his way, you're wrong. You're a bad guy. You're a loser. You're a loser. Yeah, I wasn't 4-8, buddy. I think that argument doesn't hold water until you've got it on the scoreboard. 1, 2, you've got a defensive coordinator who's never been a coordinator in his life. He's been a very good position coach. He has an excellent NFL, there's those 3 letters, reputation, but he's never called a D. He's never called a D in a rivalry game or in the Big 12. You have a lot of unknowns there. So I'm not wholly convinced that it's a better coaching staff either from a strategic standpoint and from a game day management standpoint. So by golly, your talent, which is Deion's MO anyway, better be that much better, your Jimmys and Joes, and what you've got on the field for those X's and O's to not matter. And they are absolutely banking on that, which goes back to the offensive line thing, which is why did they go for overkill and just completely overhaul the room? Because they also learned how bad their depth was, and that getting 3 or 4 good guys in a position and then kind of backfilling it with, FCS guys or group of 5 guys was not that dissimilar from what Carl Durrell ball was. And the results, therefore, looked very familiar on the scoreboard. So now let's just see how many, if we get 4-star backups, regardless of where they played at their Power 5 stops, maybe that'll solve that and we'll get it squared away. So there is a method to the madness. I just don't know how mad it really is yet, and we're all about to find out.
Deion Sanders' favorite reporter locally, Sean Keeler from the Denver Post. Always great to talk to you. I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, this is going to be a fascinating offseason football all across the state, but Boulder will be one of the more fascinating things to watch because, as you're right, you're trying to basically make magic, alchemy, whatever they're trying to do. And you want to make sure you follow Sean on social, Sean Keeler, and everything he puts together on the Denver Post. Outstanding stuff, worth the price of subscription by himself. Always great to talk to you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. See ya.
All right, appreciate it. We will stay up in Boulder, where the basketball coach, Ted Boyle, has a little less interest in the transfer portal, a little more in recruiting, but things get interesting now in an offseason. But first, you have a message for us.
Absolutely, and you've heard their signature ads for years. You're very familiar, I'm sure, with GB Fish and Chips, locally owned and operated. The best drinks, meat pies, and fish and chips in America. But did you know that GB Fish and Chips caters? They do. And with graduation summer block party season here or at most right around the corner, give your friends and family a unique fry-on-site experience, and you don't do any work. They do it all for you. Stop by any of their 4 metro locations or visit gbfishandchips.com and bring authentic fish and chips to your next gathering. That's gbfishandchips.com.
Well, we'll stay up in Boulder, where Colorado Buffaloes basketball, of course, had a very successful season, their best regular season ever in terms of wins, and a terrific win in the tournament as well. And then things get complicated because you had graduations, you had transfer. Eddie Lampkin, who was so critical in the front court to the Buffs, transfers away and goes to Syracuse, as a lot of the players are expected to leave. Now, this is complicated, Sandy, because is it good or is it bad? And I have gone back and forth ever since the end of the season. ESPN's mock draft recently has 3 of the Buffaloes getting selected. Cody Williams going number 12 overall to Oklahoma City. Tristan Da Silva going number 17 overall to the Lakers. That would actually be a terrific pick for the Lakers, to be honest. And KJ Simpson now going from potentially being undrafted to now being drafted in the mock draft at ESPN at 45 overall by Sacramento would make a pretty nice backup point guard there as well. So the Buffs lose 3 of their top players, including their one and done freshman. That was expected all along when we had Ted Boyle on this program early in the season. He even said at the time, Cody Williams is one and done. That's just the way it's going to be. Indeed, that is the way it's going to be. But for the Buffs, you lose that much talent. You lose those 3 guys. You lose Lampkin. Now, all of a sudden, your top scorer is the guy that was your 5th leading scorer last year returning. And for the Buffs, is this a disaster? Or is this good because you are putting 3 of your guys into the draft, showing that when you go out onto the recruiting trail or even to the transfer portal, if you're Tad Boyle, you're like, look, we not only win, we just set the new team high in wins, but we win in the tournament and we send guys to the NBA.
Well, I like Tad Boyle's approach to the transfer portal because he isn't completely averse to bringing people in, especially if he loses some key people, which he has. But my sense is that the way some of them left suggested that they looked at the situation for next year and some of the recruits coming in, and Tad Boyle does recruit a little more aggressively than Deion Sanders does, recruits high school kids,
including
and
here.
The kids coming in some cases, were going to supplant those who might have stayed. And they see that and they transfer. The biggest problem for Colorado competitively next year is that they're moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12.
Which is
that's the biggest impediment.
And it's the best basketball conference in the country. I think when you look at it and people kind of tune in and just look at the tournament time, which is fine, you're thinking about you look at the Dukes, you look at the Blue Bloods, and you're thinking, well, those aren't, Big 12 teams. Top to bottom, the Big 12 is the best basketball conference in the country, and I'm not sure it's all that close.
And it's undoubtedly getting better. I was listening to
brought in Arizona,
a Bill Self press gathering a few weeks back, and he was asked specifically about every one of the new entries, and his answer was it will only make the best basketball conference in the country for years, if not decades, even stronger.
So how much of a and I get it, the transfer portal situation is different for Boyle, but you run the risk, I guess, of setting a new high in wins and then potentially falling off a cliff. I don't think it's gonna be a disaster.
I don't,
but you're in a tougher
will,
conference.
Though.
Now
I don't think they will.
We've talked about how difficult it is, and I get totally different sports, different roster sizes. How difficult it is to microwave a roster with Deion Sanders and the football team. Now it's less difficult to do that in basketball, obviously, but you'll be doing, if you're Tad Boyle, much of the same, won't you, this year? Having to cobble together a bunch of new guys and getting them ready to go from the jump.
Yeah, but I think, again, they plan for that. And basketball is different. I think the offensive line brings or demands a certain amount of cohesion.
Yes.
And obviously so does a basketball team. But they've got some guys who began to get minutes late in the season who are going to go from being 10-minute, maybe 15-minute a game guys to 25 to 30-minute a game guys. And that seems like a fair evolutionary process. Now, again, the competition will be more difficult, and they won't win as many games as they won in 23-24 this coming season. They won't. And yet, at the same time, I think maybe they get to keep some of these young guys and build something. And that's what he's really all about, creating an environment where you would want to stay if you're not a 5-star the way Cody Williams was. And frankly, Cody Williams' contribution to this team that set a record at Colorado for wins in a season, his contribution to that was minimal.
It really was. And I think that's part of the equation too. That Cody Williams' biggest contribution to the Buffs basketball program might be getting selected in the early parts of the first round. I mean, that might be his biggest contribution because it helps recruiting. And
they
even
got
though Williams himself wasn't that
picks.
good. Yeah. And De Silva is going to be a first round draft pick. When teams get a chance to really look at him and look at that NBA skill set, he's going to be an NBA guy. But yeah, in Williams' case, I think that's a big part of it. You end up going maybe in the lottery, and that's what you hang your hat on. The challenges in that conference, of course, but the setup here is intriguing because you are able to maybe go after different players that you hadn't before. The transfer portal may give you an opportunity to get more talent than you have before because raising that profile matters. And it's kind of interesting to watch the Buffalo's basketball program and the Buffalo's football program, because even though they're run vastly different by very different people, it's still the same athletic program at the University of Colorado, still the same AD, still the way things are run. But it feels like what the Buffs are dealing with on the basketball court with departures, whether it's graduation, whether it's transfer portals, and how to keep going and building simultaneously is what the Buffalo's football team wants to get to and maybe doesn't know how to do it yet. Because what you're talking about with Boyle is adjusting year by year, adding what you need to be effective year by year, while still investing in developing when some of those years, whether it's recruiting or transfer portal, isn't so fruitful. That seems to be something Boyle understands that Sanders does not yet.
And it varies. Basketball and football are different.
They're very different sports.
That way,
very,
too.
very different.
But I think your chances of getting the equivalent of a Hadley, for example, are better in basketball than they might be in football because you're getting a guy about whom you know a little bit more. Style of play matters. Okay, what are our needs? Does this particular transfer fit those needs? I go to Kansas, which is probably the most active school when it came to basketball activity in the transfer portal over the last few months.
Right.
They needed shooting. And I got shooters. Guys get that hit the three ball. You know, the responsibilities for a basketball player fitting in with four other guys on the court at any given time, he does what he does well. And a good coach finds what he does well and complements what he does well with other guys, and also counteracts the weakness of any individual with strength elsewhere. And I think especially at home, playing at altitude, even in the Big 12, CU's going to have an advantage playing in Boulder. The Big 12, they aren't used to playing at altitude.
That's for sure.
Often.
It'll be an interesting off season, obviously, and when the season begins for Tad Boyle, obviously coming off that new record for regular season wins, a very successful season. The overhaul will be significant. We'll find out what they do later in the year. But we'll turn our attention to the Denver Broncos, because one of the Broncos fan favorites, a relatively new star, might be closer to being on his way out of Denver than staying in and becoming one of the faces of the franchise. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Sandy has a message from our friends at Zaner Hardin Law.
We always talk about planning, and there are some things you can plan for, and there are some things that you would rather not plan for, but may happen to you. For example, a car accident, a major injury. If you've been involved in one, you know you need an attorney, and you got to go to the best, and we have an easy solution in the fact that Zaner Hardin Law is one of the premier law firms in the country. Kurt Zaner, Mark Hardin are the very kinds of lawyers you want handling your case, two of the most elite personal injury lawyers in Colorado and throughout America. They've won nearly every award: Trial Lawyer of the Year, $1 Million Advocates, Super Lawyers, Top 100 National Trial Lawyers. They've appeared in the Denver Post, on local news outlets, and even Good Morning America. These guys handle the most important cases, and they work tirelessly to keep our community a safe place. With multi-million-dollar verdicts in respect of every insurance company, you're lucky, we all are, to have these guys in our own backyard. So if you've been involved in an auto accident, reach out to Xander Harden today at yourstorywillbetold.com. That's yourstorywillbetold.com.
For over 4 years now in Colorado, you've heard all the ads about online sports betting. You've seen them. You've probably been overwhelmed by them, and you can probably even hear some of them in your sleep. Hi, Aaron Paul. I can hear them all the time now. So we apologize for adding one more to the pile, but the idea is this one's going to make it easier on you. Did you know that Mile High Sports has gathered all of the best sign-up bonuses and offers and put them on one page on our website? Well, we're trying to make it easy on you. We wanted to make it easy for folks who were interested in betting to find the best options. So we researched all of it, brought them all together in a way that makes it simple to know what's available. There are so many different kind of offers. There's bonus bets and second chance bets, deposit matches, but all of them, we've put them in one place over at Mile High Sports, so it's easy for you to go take a look at them and see what bonus or what sign-up bonus gives you the best opportunity to join the world of online sports betting in the way you want to do it. Here's how you do it. You go to milehighsports.com or download our free mobile app. Maybe you've done that already. Well, it's easy. You just click on Colorado Sports Betting, and then all of it will all be down there laid out for you. All of the offers in the easiest way for you to understand. You don't have to remember any of them. Just go here, look through the ones that fits best for you, and go ahead and sign up right there, making it easy. It's just that simple. Think of it as your bonus from your friends here at Mile High Sports. Sandy, ever since he came into town, and I think thrilled Broncos fans with the idea of his bowling ball style of running with a burst, Javonte Williams instantly became a fan favorite and looked as if there was a possibility that he might become one of the Broncos, not only stars of the moment, but even the potential of being one of the better running backs the Broncos have ever had. And obviously with Terrell Davis, that bar is high. But beyond Terrell Davis, there's definitely room for a lot of players to be involved. And Javonte Williams looked like he might be on that cusp. But the serious knee injury that he absorbed, that he came back from last year, maybe even a little bit earlier than expected, but wasn't quite the player that he was. I think that makes this season really interesting because he is not, number one, a Sean Payton addition. Sean Payton's added a lot of running backs since. And two, he's in the final year of his rookie contract. The Broncos, given the numbers they got out of last year, may not very well want to extend him. Is this the last year Javonte Williams is going to play for the Denver Broncos unless he absolutely sparkles?
I'm not sure, and I'm a major Javonte Williams fan. I thought what he showed before tearing up his knee suggested that he could be someone special. Certainly a three-down back. Not a specialist, a three-down back. Not a guy who you run on first and second downs, but take out on third downs, not a third down back. Here's the deal. I think the idea last year was that Javonte Williams would come back earlier than anyone expected, whether you think that was right or wrong, and you'd have Samaje Perine as a third down back, better pass catcher.
And blocker, for that matter, too.
And very good blocker. This year, you've got one draft pick in Estime and another in Watson.
Yeah, the undrafted college free agent out of
Memphis. There's your three down back and your third down back pass catcher coming out of the backfield. Not in 2025, but maybe in 2024. Here, that's what's going to be interesting. And I want to see how Sean Payton handles situations with people he inherited. People he had nothing to do with bringing to Denver. Now, technically, I know Perine was brought to Denver last year
as a free agent
when Sean Payton was the head coach. Right. I get that. But Cortland Sutton wasn't brought in by Sean Payton. Nope. Tim Patrick was not brought in by Sean Payton. Javonte Williams was not drafted by Sean Payton. He was drafted by a Payton, but that would have been George. I actually thought it was a very good draft pick. Almost as good as Patrick Surtain being the first round pick in Peyton's first draft out of Alabama. I thought moving up 5 spots to get Williams was a master stroke. I don't think he would have been there at 40. They needed to move up to 35 to get him, but he's not a Sean Payton guy. Damari Mathis, the cornerback, is not a Sean Payton guy. Greg Dulcich, the tight end, is not a Sean Payton guy. And lest you think that Dulcich is somebody they're counting on, I advise that you go back and look at every word that Sean Payton has spoken on Greg Dulcich over the last few months. And it all screams, he's got to show me. I don't want to be told. I've got to be shown. And it's very clear that if Greg Dulcich somehow puts his hamstring issues into the rear view mirror, okay, he has a chance to play some, but Sean Payton is not counting on that. Bill Barnwell of ESPN suggested today in a column on AFC off-season activities for all 16 teams that the most obvious feature of the Bronco offseason is how busy they're going to be on the phones in August trying to trade people for future draft picks. The 2024 season is at best transitional, even if it doesn't turn catastrophic.
That's a good way to put it, because we both firmly believe the Broncos are set to take a step back for obvious reasons, but it does feel like it's a transition year. We've been on top of this situation with Cortland Sutton, and I know I believe that the best situation is probably where Sutton ends up somewhere else. And I think Sutton has probably come to that understanding as well. And maybe Sean Payton has too. They're just waiting, and we'll wait for minicamp. They'll see at the mandatory minicamp if he shows, if they find him, or how that breaks down. But that's part of it. But the situation with Williams is interesting. He's in the last year of his deal, paying $2.8 million. And he wasn't bad last year. 774 rushing yards, tied for the team lead in touchdowns with 3. That was with Russell Wilson, mind you. And then another 2 touchdowns receiving. He got over 1,000 yards just by a smidge combined. But it was the averages
look at the last
that were
10 games where they were
right
subterranean.
Right. And Williams over the course of the year averaged 3.6 yards per carry, averaged 4.9 yards per catch. In comparison, even Samaje Perine, who only ran for 238 yards, averaged 4.5 per carry and 9.1 yards per catch. More effective there. And let's not forget about, we talked about Watson. We talked about Estime. Don't forget about Jaleel McLaughlin, who last year was the second leading rusher on the Broncos, 410 yards, 5.4 per carry to lead the team. And as you pointed out, over the course of the season, he rarely played even as much of a third of the snaps. So when you look at the situation here, and this is the way I think about it too, Estime in Notre Dame last year was phenomenal. 1,341 yards. That's 6.4 yards per carry and 18 rushing
Which,
touchdowns.
by the way, made him number 1 in the country yards per carry with those who carried at least 200 times, and he's 20 years old.
And yes, young and doesn't have as many miles on him as
exactly, and he doesn't have an injury history.
I think the Broncos got,
and he runs the same way as Williams does stylistically. So,
except even maybe a little bigger and stronger, and with a really good nose for the goal.
Bigger, stronger, healthier, and he's Sean Payton's guy, and Williams is not,
and cheaper going forward as well, not picked in the second round. So
all things being equal, they're going to choose the cheaper option. And I'm not even sure all things will be equal, because the most modest forecast for Estime is he will be a full-time Denver running back in 2025.
And probably a goal line specialist.
Most modest.
Yes. If not
the most optimistic is he could be the opening day starter.
So Estime makes the team, assuming they end up keeping Perine, which
he's a 5th round pick,
right?
And you know how even George Payton is going to say, if it's Estime, a 5th round pick, and Watson being the 2 guys who featured a little more, even McLaughlin not drafted, right? He's going to say, this is what we do here. We don't need a lot of high round picks. We excel late in the draft. We excel because we're very good at signing the best of the undrafted college free agents.
Is there a chance, realistically, because the Broncos are piled up with dead cap and it wouldn't be the end of the world, I guess, for them this year, is there a chance that if Estime and Perine and McLaughlin and Watson, I mean, that's 4 backs.
Well, what if somebody else comes out of nowhere? That's again.
And that happens too.
I'm not saying Javonte Williams is going to get cut. I'm saying he's not a guaranteed starter. No, I don't think you're going to cut him. They'll try to trade
him. I agree with you. I think they will try to. I think they will try to.
That's
trade
what
him.
I'm talking about when I say they'll be busy on the phones in August. I think they try to trade Sutton. I think they tried trade Sutton. Williams. I think they try to trade Javonte Williams. I think they'll see what they can get for Dulcich, see what they can get for Mathis. Mathis is going to start, and if he doesn't start, why would you have him around? Why would Peyton want him around? Peyton's going forward. We all know this about Peyton. He's going forward with his guys,
right,
whether they be vets or rookies that were brought in under his auspices. They're his guys, and they come first. You trade the rest, and I don't know.
Is Pastor
Sean
the only
Payton
exception to
for
that?
a very long time wanted to do that. I don't know. I would guess probably an exception to that. I mean, he's their best football player right now that Justin Simmons is gone. He's their best player. If their best player can't intercept more than one pass in 2024, I think there are going to be some issues.
Yeah, I don't even think it's outside the realm of possibility in the offseason, because I think that Sean Payton is a kind of coach that, and I will say this, the kind of coach and man that runs the football program, because George Payton works for Sean Payton now, not any sort of other way around, and they're not equal on the org chart. Don't buy it. This is Sean Payton's team. And that's where I kind of look at this running back situation. You look at, they brought in two guys. They brought in two the year before. And P. Ryan and McLaughlin both worked. P. Ryan, it feels like they could have gotten even more out of had they wanted to. And McLaughlin certainly has a lot of ability that at the very least is sort of a change of pace or even a gimmick player and a returner. He's going to be making the team.
They have, and I'd throw Watson into the mix. They have
and I think Blake Watson's a heck of a running back.
Candidates.
And that's not including Marvin Mims, who was a Pro Bowler.
Who made the Pro Bowl last year. No, you're right. And so this is a rarity and something that clearly Peyton takes very seriously. And it hasn't been very good around here. The return game, special teams, in quite some time, though the special teams graded out a lot better last year.
And kickoff returns are going to be completely revamped with an opportunity to make bigger plays and flip the field more dramatically. So
they need playmakers. And if there is one subject on which I would guess fans, media, and even coaches agree, they need more playmakers. They need more game changers.
Is Javonte Williams one anymore? Or has the injury robbed him of that?
We'll see this year. I think we may see it in training camp or not see it. And if we don't see it in training camp, I'm not sure he'll get to opening day as the starter. I think the best case scenario, they have to be realistic. They're not going to get anything approximating equal value in terms of where Williams was drafted not that long ago. They're not going to get a second back for him, but maybe he could get a third-day pick.
And if you're Sean Payton and you're not going to use him anyway, you're just happy to picks are more picks. That's how you tend to look at it. So it is fascinating. We will look at the very sad news, but have an opportunity to look back at the loss of Bill Walton in a moment. And I definitely have thoughts. I know Sandy does about what to remember about.
He got to know Bill Walton very well.
And
back in the day,
it will be. We'll definitely talk about the loss there, but I also do want to remind you, of course, as we've talked about many, many times, that in the Colorado market, things are obviously very, very difficult. And if you're trying to sell a home, that's one thing. If you're trying to buy a home, it's really hard. And if you're trying to buy a home in this Colorado market that's been crazy for years, I know who you need to call. That's David Mark at Key Real Estate Group's Colorado Luxury Home Team. When I say they're Colorado's Luxury Home Team, doesn't mean you have to be in the market for a luxury home, although you certainly can. It's the high-end luxury service that you will get regardless of what you're shopping for, whether you're buying or selling. But whatever you're looking to buy, you will get the same high-end luxury service from Dave and Mark at Key Real Estate Group. You need experts that know Colorado's market, know how to ride all of those highs and lows, which means you need experience and stability when finding the right home to purchase. Key Real Estate Group is as stable as it gets. Privately held company, 25 years in the exact same offices. You're dealing with them. So you're dealing with the people on the ground who have been doing this for decades. The Fed still expected to lower interest rates in 2024. So try to beat the competition and buy your new home before that summer buying frenzy returns to Denver. And maybe even if you're thinking of a new build, you're thinking, well, I don't need an agent necessarily. Home builders are giving great incentives for new homes, but at the same time, they don't have to give you all of them. Right? Getting a representation can help. So let David and Mark represent you to make sure that you're getting everything you deserve, because it's your new home and you want to make sure that it's the best that you can get for your money. Make sure it goes the longest way it can possibly go with our friends David and Mark at the Key Real Estate Group. You can find them easy enough, 720-900-LIST. That's 720-900-LIST, or visit them today at keyrealestategroup.com.
We all know over the weekend a very well-known player on the PGA Tour died by suicide. And kudos to the courage his parents had in making that announcement and recognizing that the mental health issue that this person championed is not only an important issue in sports today, it is maybe the number one issue in our society. And it's been my good fortune to know Dr. Rick Perea, the premier performance psychologist, as a performance psychologist and as a close friend for the last 11 and a half years. You get your checkup from the neck up every week on Mile High Sports Radio at 5:30 on Wellness Wednesdays. And Rick Perea has done great work in major professional sports on the collegiate level, on the high school level as well. And among his credentials, having been the chief performance psychologist for the world champion Denver Broncos in 2015, he worked with the Colorado Rockies next to their 2-year run to the playoffs back in 2017 and 18, and he worked for the 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets as well. But he helps people in all walks of life. He performs as a speaker, but his one-on-one work with patients is what he's most known for. You can call him today at 720-287-0933. That's 720-287-0933, or look him up at Dr. P at think1number4u.org. That's think1number4u.org.
Over the weekend, the sad news that Bill Walton passed away. Walton's 71 years old, the remarkable personality, remarkable player, and it's easy to forget how great a player he was if you didn't get a chance to watch him, because college basketball was very, very different. You're talking about a player at UCLA that won 3 Naismith Awards, won the most outstanding player in the Final Four not once but twice. His 44 points in the final game is still the record, by the way, on a 21 of 22 shooting night. Number 1 pick in the NBA draft, MVP in 1977-78, 2-time champion.
When he only played 58 games, by the way.
2-time NBA champion, and had to retire early in his career due to injuries that actually hampered about half of his professional career. One of the greatest basketball players in the history of the sport by any measurement. And even that, Sandy, feels like I'm shortchanging Bill Walton, the person who is an ambassador for sports, an ambassador for enjoying the love of sports, especially collegiate sports. A remarkable figure, and there is a hole in the sports landscape that I don't think will ever be filled again, because I don't think we'll see his like come by another time.
I've heard his closest friends refer to having heard the news yesterday as a gut punch, and obviously there were people close to him who knew how he had been fighting cancer, and you got the sense from his good friend and broadcast colleague Dave Pasch on ESPN when Bill wasn't at the Pac-12 tournament this year right throughout. I think the last game he did was in early February. He was not a part of what he loved, the Pac-12 championship tournament, and referred to the Pac-12 as Conference of Champions and so on. And from the way Dave Pasch talked, you knew that he had to have been very ill not to have been a part of that. But the Bill Walton I came to know was the Bill Walton who did for a few years a weekly guest shot with Mike Evans and I in a previous broadcast life. And the thing I remember about Bill Walton, apart from all the wisdom he imparted, was how he would listen for a full hour to our show before he came on the air. I never had a regular guest.
Figure he was so busy doing other shows.
Guest do that.
Remarkable.
And he was doing other shows, but he never did shows back to back because he wanted to listen and get a sense of the conversation, the subject matter. He was the smartest person I ever encountered, the most well-read, the most comfortable being who he was. And every week you never knew exactly what would come out of his mouth, but he prepared because he always operated on the John Wooden maxim: a failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And that was Bill Walton. And the other thing I remember about Bill Walton, I was fortunate enough to be named Colorado Sportscaster of the Year in 1999. When the announcement came out, Bill Walton somehow knew about it. And the first thing he said, just the next day, I believe, after the announcement had been made, and all kinds of, from all over the country, there's state award winners, national award winners, broadcasters and sports writers and so on. It was the first thing he said. He congratulated me and commended me and was very specific and detailed about why he liked working with me and appreciated the work I put in. I've never had a guest do that before, with maybe one exception, and that was John Elway, who came on with me after my mother passed away around the time I got to know Rick Berea. John Elway was the only one, and John Elway and I knew each other pretty well. Bill Walton, I did get a chance to meet later on, but he was just a guest by phone on a radio talk show for a while, but he was always up to speed on Denver sports, and not just the Nuggets, by the way.
Right.
And he was one of the sharpest observers of the human condition I've ever run across.
Yes.
And people have said to me, and I even thought myself for a while, it's funny how Bill Walton wasn't terribly media friendly during his playing days, but became a Hall of Fame broadcaster.
But by doing it his way.
Sportscaster. But people forget Bill Walton until 1980 had a severe stuttering problem. And because he was at his best before 1980, rather than post 1980, apart from that Sixth Man of the Year award he won in 85-86, part of the great Boston Celtic team that year, Bill Walton was not comfortable speaking to anyone, and only became comfortable after his association with Marty Glickman, who I got to know, Syracuse grad, one of the great broadcasters of all time, who cured Bill Walton of his stuttering problem in a way that perhaps no one else could have. So it was the stuttering that made Bill Walton hesitant about dealing with the media. And it wasn't hypocritical for him to be, once his playing days were over, a notable part of the media, while at the same time being uncomfortable from his earlier days, his younger days, when he wasn't comfortable speaking. And he said that was the greatest achievement of his life. That tells you all you need to know about Bill Walton, that he always thought of others first. And he said his greatest achievement in life was overcoming his stuttering problem.
Here's what he told Nick Kosmider of The Athletic back in 2018 about Nikola Jokic. And Nikola Jokic obviously was becoming a force, but was not the redefining the NBA style of player that he's becoming. And here's what he said back in 2018. He's a beautiful player who plays a mental game. He has what seems to have been lost in the world, which is peripheral vision. When you walk down the street in life, when you drive a car in life, when you ride a bike in the world on the street, it is staggering the lack of peripheral vision. But Nikola Jokic is the antidote to so many of our problems in the world. When you see someone like a Nelson Mandela or a Martin Luther King or a Mahatma Gandhi, someone who sees the future before anyone else does, knows how to get to where they need to be and where they want to be. That's Nikola Jokic. Happiness begins when selfishness ends. In a game that has been taken over by incessant dribbling for yourself, Nikola Jokic is such a breath of fresh air, and it's his imagination. Watching him play basketball is watching Bob Dylan come up with a song. One analyst in the history of sports would have ever
No
defined
one
it like
else
that.
could have
And this
said
was
that.
before Jokic turned into the juggernaut that he is now.
Right. That was 6 years ago.
Right.
Jokic had not been an MVP in the NBA. He had not been a finals MVP in the NBA. He hadn't even been to the playoffs yet. That came in 2019. But Bill Walton saw in Nikola Jokic something that very few saw or projected that they would see coming down the line. And I just want to make one point during the course of the time that Bill Walton did his weekly show with us. He always talked about his favorite series as a basketball player was a series in 1977 between the Trailblazers and the Nuggets. And for Bill Walton, the Nuggets were better than the 76ers or anybody else in the league that the Blazers had to beat out for a championship that year. And he said that was the purest basketball I was ever a part of during that series against Dan Issel and the Denver Nuggets. Of course, had the great David Thompson, who had defeated Walton's Bruins at UCLA in the Final Four in 1974. And I want to say that for closeout games to win a championship, no center, certainly, and maybe no player played better than Bill Walton did in Game 6 of the NBA Finals in 1977. 20 points, 23 rebounds, 7 assists, 8 blocked shots. So Bill Walton did do something better than Nikola Jokic did when he was healthy, and that's block shots and play defense.
Yeah.
He's a little better than Jokic in that regard, but he recognized, and this is a guy who had all kinds of health problems that prevented him from being maybe the greatest center who ever lived. But he bequeaths that to Nikola Jokic because Bill Walton thought Nikola Jokic was as good a center, maybe as good a player as had ever played the game.
When earlier in his career, when Walton said that he thought Jokic was the greatest passing center that ever lived, for me, that was good enough. That was the end.
That was it.
Me. That was it. Like, all right, Walton said so, we're done. That the conversation's over. He's the best. I think my thoughts, I didn't have the relationship that Sandy had, of course, and I only had a chance to view him from afar. But I think it's interesting that we talk about Bill Walton, and we don't actually talk that much about basketball. And you didn't, and I didn't. We know about the achievements, and they're remarkable. May have been one of the best players that's ever lived. But you remember thoughtfulness, kindness, and joy.
Yes.
He said it himself about Jokic. Happiness begins where selfishness ends.
Yeah, that was a Wooden line, too.
And
he picked up a lot from Wooden and passed it on in a different way. Just a wonderful person and a monumental loss.
Yeah, there are lessons there, I think, for all of us. You know, I think your truest legacies lie in the way we treat one another and the way that Walton thought about it. Think about it. Be kind. Find joy and bring it to others. Anybody can do that. And if that's Bill Walton's legacy, I suspect he would be awfully, awfully proud of it. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Danny Bailey for making everything work. Sean Keeler of the Never Post joined us. Give him a follow on social at Sean Keeler. We will be back at it tomorrow. Thanks all of you for watching. Really appreciate it. Whether you're on the YouTube channel, Mile High Sports, the Mile High Sports app, all of those things available for you. Appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow for Santa Clough. I'm Sean Drotar. This is Mile High Sports.